Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm Amy Wintermeyer. I'm the Interim Director of College Counseling, and we're so excited that you could join us for our Sophomore Family College Night. I am joined here tonight by my team. I've got Denise Melgar and Jake Cisco with me here, and we're all going to take a chance to just introduce ourselves. I also wanted to acknowledge that Michelle Baird is not able to be with us this evening. She's got a sick kiddo at home. So just know that she would be here if she could, and she's very, very much a part of our team. You may know her. She's been a longtime humanities teacher here, and she made the switch over to working with college counseling this year as both our office manager and as assistant director. And so she's taking on a small caseload while still continuing to teach. Just a little background on me. I joined the MA team in July. I've got 15 years of experience working in college counseling. I've done a lot of work in a lot of different independent schools around the country. And I've been really feeling more of like an interim time here. And we're in the process of finalizing our search for the director of college counseling. We're expecting to have news on that in the next few weeks. So we'll keep you posted on that. But it's been wonderful to be part of the MA team and to be a part of this. Denise and Jake, do you want to each one introduce yourself?
I'll go first just because my picture is there first. Hi, everyone. My name is Denise Melgar. My pronouns are she, her, hers, ella en español, and I am one of the associate directors of college counseling here at Marin Academy. I started last July after 5 years of working in undergraduate admissions at NYU, and it really has been such a pleasure to work with my current seniors and juniors, getting to learn more about their passions and how much they care about learning and all the other things that they're involved in at MA has been a really great experience over the last half year or so.
Hi, everyone. My name's Jake Cisco. I'm the other associate director with Denise. And just like she said, we started last summer. I want to reiterate a lot of what she said in terms of how great this program has been for us so far and how great it's been getting to know everyone within the school. My pronouns are he, him, his. I've been involved as an advisor at the school as well as working with the juniors and seniors. I'm also working with one of the affinity groups on campus. So it's just been great to be a member of the community so quickly and to kind of jump in with all the different tasks that this involves. So thanks again for having us tonight. We're looking forward to presenting to you and feel free to ask questions as we go.
Thanks, everyone. I also want to just take a moment that if you are in need of translation, there is on your screen down the bottom near, like on the lower right-hand side, you should see a globe that says interpretation. And then you can click on either the Mandarin or the Spanish channels. And we're so lucky to have Wei Li and Mariah translating for us this evening. And so just know that that is an available resource for you. So in terms of our goals of this program tonight, we really wanted to just go through the timing of the college process with you so that you know what's to come in the months and years ahead. We wanted to give you a little bit of a preview on the current landscape of standardized testing. We wanted to go over really what to expect with the course selection process as you encounter it this spring. And we wanted to spend some time talking about extracurriculars, summer programs, things like that, that a lot of families are worried about in 10th grade. At this point, I'm going to pass it off to Denise, and she's going to talk to you about our program and what's to expect in 10th grade.
Thank you. I am sharing my screen, so unmuting can be hard. But thank you so much, Amy. So if you have attended one of our programs before, you maybe have already heard us list out our office values. And as I've been meeting with my juniors currently, it's something that I've been emphasizing in all of our meetings and how important we really think these values are to the process that they're embarking on. And so we wanted to share those with you all as well. One of those is choices. And so we do feel that it is important for every student to have choices in where they attend college once they're wrapping up the process as seniors, right? And part of what we do to ensure that they have choices is emphasize the importance of having a balanced list. And so that means having schools that they're excited about with a wide range of selectivity. We work really closely with our students to, again, kind of ensure that once they're wrapping up that process, they really do feel like they have choices of where they can attend. Self-awareness. So we do think that this is, or I like to believe that this is a really exciting time for students as they're embarking on the college journey and the college research process, as they are starting to discover more about themselves and really asking themselves those questions that maybe they haven't thought about too much before, like, why do I want this? What is important to me? What am I looking for in a school and in my next community and in the next couple of years of my education? So I think it's a great time for them to learn more about themselves and who they are and what they care about throughout the process. Self-worth is one that we think is also really important. We know that college can be a very transformative and impactful time for your students, but we also want students to find other sorts of fulfillment that doesn't just come tied to what colleges they do or don't get into. We like to tell our students that, again, there are so many factors that go into a college decision from different institutions, and they shouldn't kind of tie their own self-worth to what those colleges decide at the end of the day. And then the last piece is autonomy. We're here to, of course, support and guide your students throughout the process once we start meeting with them. And of course, we hope that you are also, going to support and partner with us to ensure that they're making the most of this process. But we really want them to feel like they are in the driver's seat, right? Like this is their process. I keep telling them, like, I already went to college. I already went through this process for myself. So this is really for them to, again, learn about themselves and find the place that's going to be the best fit for them. So we really want them to take ownership of the process as we work with them in our office. So that's a little bit about our values. And then we also want to tell you a little bit about the timeline. So I'll be talking about 10th grade first, as it's where many of, if this is our sophomore night, so of course where your students are in the process. Right now in February, we're having this 10th grade parent programming, kind of to give you all a sense of, again, what the process is going to look like over the next couple of months and years. We are very shortly also going to be offering in March a practice ACT test at MA. And then later on in April, we'll also offer a practice SAT test at MA. And sometime right after spring break, students also get the assignment of who their college counselor is. If your student is unable to maybe take one of those practice SAT or ACT tests, we can also recommend other places for them to take a practice test, really just for them to get a better understanding of which tests might be the best fit for them. Of course, colleges now don't necessarily have a preference as to which test students are submitting. And so we really want them to set their best foot forward if they will eventually apply with testing, and getting a feel for which test is most comfortable for them at this stage, we think is really important for them to essentially determine their testing plan after those practice tests. Once summertime comes, if your student is someone who maybe is thinking about the athletic recruitment process, we know that that can sometimes have a more accelerated timeline. And so we are here and available to work with your students if they have any questions specifically about the recruiting process. And otherwise, if your student is maybe not considering that, but has questions, again, they will be assigned to a counselor post spring break. And so prior to that, if they do have questions, they can reach out to us generally, but we'll also be here for your specific student to whoever they're assigned to after that. And just a quick tip, if you are maybe taking some family trips over the summer or over spring break, we do think that it's a great time to visit a college campus or two, just to start getting a feel for what that looks like. And now Jake will talk to you a little bit about 11th and 12th grade.
Thanks so much, Denise. So just as we're getting into junior year, we want to give you some tangible takeaways in terms of dates to expect as this process kind of evolves. First and foremost, in August to November is really when the really everyone that we're allowing to visit is coming to campus to actually give a spiel about their individual college or university. And so that's a great time for juniors to come. We recommend at least 3 visits just so they can get a feel for different schools. It might be schools they've heard of, it might be schools that they've never seen before, but in general, we're trying to get them at least in front of college reps so they can learn more about individual institutions. At the same time, in that time frame, September, October, we're going to have a parent program for junior parents. And so that'll be specifically, again, kind of like this in the evening, either over Zoom or in person. That's yet to be determined, but it's a chance for you to kind of touch base with the counselors themselves. We'll be in regular email communication throughout the year, so August to June. And at the same time, students are expected to take an official SAT or ACT at any point during junior year. It can be in the fall, it could be in the spring, but by June, once our graduation rolls around, we expect every student to have at least one test score available for them to utilize in the process if they choose to submit testing. The formal process kicks off though in January. So in the fall, we're really dedicating our time to seniors. But in January, we kick off with parent and student programming for the juniors to kind of become our main point of attention. And then throughout that spring semester from January all the way up until June and graduation rolls around, we'll be having individual introductory meetings with students as well as with students and their parents, which we call our family meetings. And those take place, like I said, throughout the second semester. And then after graduation, for about a week after, we offer 4 different essay workshops, which essentially entail us helping them with their essay writing before they get into the summer, and they can kind of spend their time thinking about what they want to write about throughout the summer rather than putting that off until the fall of senior year. Speaking of the fall of senior year, if we can switch to the next slide, I'll speak a little bit about the 12th grade experience. So we do have a common application workshop in August where we also walk seniors through the common application and help them fill it out so they don't have to worry too much about the actual process and logistics of it all. So they're essentially done with their common application once they finish that, once they, of course, write their essays and put together their activity lists as well. Starting in August, in the beginning of the fall semester, we also offer college seminar once a rotation. So a student takes their free block and comes over to college seminar for the fall. It's essentially kind of like a study hall meets conference where every other week, Denise and Michelle and I will kind of sit down with the students and walk them through specific tenets of this process. Maybe it's how to understand the reputation / branding of each institution. Maybe it's about filling out the UC application, right? It really changes its topic based on what point of the process we're in. But essentially it's like I said, kind of tangible work information for them to kind of process and go through this search together. At the same time, these college rep visits are happening just like they were for the juniors. They come every year around the same time from August to November. Seniors are again encouraged to attend as many visits as possible. So with the juniors, we say it's at least 3. With the seniors, it's whoever strikes your fancy. Again, even if you haven't heard of them, maybe we put them on your list as a suggestion, and now this is your chance to learn about, I don't know, Carleton in Minnesota. And so it's a great time for students to really connect with those representatives and learn more about individual institutions. Of course, we'll be in regular email communication throughout the year as well, but as the year kicks off formally in terms of the academic year, we'll also have a 12th grade parent program, and that'll happen sometime around Labor Day, usually the week or before or after. As we roll into October and the fall, though, that's when the active application deadline starts, some as early as October 15th, but most will be in November 1 or November 15th for those early action and early decision deadlines. But really, application deadlines stretch all the way through February. And with some schools offering rolling admission, they stretch even past that. So we'll be working with the seniors for the bulk of this time. Obviously, like I said, we switched to the juniors in January. But for the fall, we really dedicate our time specifically to seniors and making sure they can get things in for their deadlines that happen throughout those months. December is the last month that seniors can sit for standardized testing. So I want to keep that in mind in case they didn't like the test that they received, the result they received on the test that they took in junior year. They are allowed to retake in the fall of senior year, but December is really the last month for those retakes. And then December through April, again, depending on the deadline, whether it's early, rolling, or regular, these college decisions start to arrive in students' email inboxes. That being said, May 1 is a universal reply date. So if a student gets an early action in December, they actually have until May to decide whether or not they're going to that school. Early decision is typically an earlier deadline, but for the universal reply date, when every student has to tell a school where they're going and where they're depositing, they would enroll by May 1. Across the board. And then of course, sometime in early June, we'll hold graduation and they'll wrap up senior year.
Okay, so now that we've just shared about like when you'll start testing and when your student can finish testing, wanted to give you a little bit of an update just on what the landscape of testing has been, especially since COVID has, COVID disrupted a lot of it, of everything in the world, and it certainly disrupted a lot connected to the college application process. So first thing to understand is that during COVID, nearly every institution in the country was not able to require testing just because they couldn't guarantee that students would have access to it. At this point, even now in 2023, most institutions are still test optional, and some schools have become test blind. So the UC and Cal State system, for example, will not take any testing even if you send it. Know that this is a moving target, and this is something that we are monitoring really closely. But it is like, so we've been really focusing, for example, on what's going to happen for this current junior class. And we know for them that most schools will still remain test optional for next year, but we're waiting to see what happens this spring and if any schools announce any different policies. Because of that, we really recommend that all students still plan to test so that they don't have any limits in their choices. Right now, there are only a handful of schools that have gone back to requiring testing, but if those schools end up being places that the students want to go, we want to make sure that they have those choices. So that's partly why we want to make sure that the students are taking the practice tests. The dates again are listed down at the bottom of this slide. The practice test for the ACT is March 12th. The practice test for the SAT is April 22nd. As Denise said earlier, if your child can't make those dates, we can make sure they have access to a simulated, like an online testing practice test. The reason we really want the students to do these practice tests now in 10th grade is more to get a sense of which test will be the right fit for them and which format they like better. Also, based on the structure of the test, the SAT is really pretty much, there's an English, verbal section, and then there's a math section. And so, and then the ACT has English, writing, math, and science. So for students who aren't as strong in math, for example, sometimes the ACT can feel like a better fit because it's only 25% of their score rather than 50% of their score. Regardless, we want to make sure that the students have a chance to try 2 full-length practice tests so that they make an informed choice on which one they end up wanting to prepare for and eventually take. Adam Ingersoll from Compass Test Prep is going to be here on April 19th. As was mentioned earlier, Adam is really a preeminent leader in really everything connected to the testing industry. We're really fortunate that he's going to be able to speak to our community that day. So I encourage you, if you're concerned about this, to make sure you tune in for that night. We'll make sure it's recorded as well. But he'll really be able to give us a sense of what's coming down the pike. The new SAT is going to be coming out digitally for your kids during their cycle, and we want to make sure that he can answer all of those questions that you have. The other thing we want to make sure you know is that deciding to report testing has really become a nuanced and individual decision. And a lot of that's because the landscape of college testing has really shifted with COVID and so few schools requiring it. What it's essentially done is that where schools had maybe a certain average score pre-COVID, because of the test optional policy, most students reporting their scores have near to close perfect scores. And so it's just skewed the numbers. And we want to make sure that if students are going to submit their scores, that they're doing so in an informed way and that they've talked with their counselor beforehand. Okay, I'm going to pass it back to Denise.
Thanks, Amy. And then the other piece of the application process that is academic focused, I would say, is definitely a student's transcript, and that ties into what kind of classes they're taking, right? And so we do highly encourage, and essentially are pushing students to ensure that they're taking a full normal course load at MA in 11th grade, which includes 6 classes. We do also highly encourage that students should plan to take a well-rounded schedule, right? And so that includes taking classes in each of these subjects here. That's English, history, math, science, world language, art. I think that there can be misconceptions about whether it's more important to double in one area versus others. And there may be conversations that students can have with their counselor about what that looks like, but it really is important that students do maintain that well-rounded schedule, that they're showing colleges that they are still actively engaging in all of these different core subjects and even electives that are crucial to the MA experience, but I would say overall to a student's learning experience. So we do highly encourage that students, again, take a full normal course load at MA, and that includes a well-balanced schedule. The course catalog for students will go live right before spring break in mid-March, I believe. At that point in the process, your sophomores will not yet have an assigned counselor, but if they do have questions about their classes and want to speak to a counselor, they're more than welcome to reach out to any of us. And we're happy to kind of help, give any advice that they might be looking for. And then the actual course selection process will take place during conferences on April 25th. But at that point, again, students will know their counselor as we're assigning college counselors right after spring break. So if they do have any follow-up questions for their specific counselor before that conference date, they can do so as well. But if they have questions before they're assigned, please do know that you can reach out to our office and we're all happy to help in that process. And now Jake is going to talk a little bit about extracurriculars.
Thanks so much, Denise. So I know a lot of students have questions about, what activities should I be involved in? And, is it important for me to have a sport? And all these kinds of questions around extracurriculars specifically. And so we wanted to address some of those tonight. First and foremost, the quality of the engagement is always going to be more important than the actual quantity of clubs or activities that you have. I think a lot of times students say, they want me to be well-rounded. Well, yes and no, right? They want you to show interest outside the classroom. They want you to show engagement with the community around you, but it's up to you how you ultimately determine that. There's no set checklist of activities of, well, he played soccer, which that's a check, and he was on the orchestra, that's a check, right? Like, they're not literally looking for a specific list. They're looking to see how a student shows their interests through the time they spend outside the classroom. And that might be a sport like soccer, that might be an activity like the violin, but it really comes down to what the student authentically and genuinely enjoys. And that's why we say that activities are not tiered, right? Mock debate and mock trial is not going to be more important than being involved in a sport, which is not more important than having a summer job, which is not more important than community service. They're all equally important as long as a student engages in a genuine and profound way that really shows substance and depth within that experience. And so we just want to, again, highlight the fact that students should do what they truly enjoy as opposed to a set list that they think will impress admission officers. During junior and senior year is really when students should be kind of seeking out leadership opportunities within activities. So maybe that's captain of the sports team, maybe that's first chair of their orchestra, maybe that is lead attorney on their mock trial team. Like, it totally depends on the activity and kind of how they engage with it to show that leadership. But it's a great time to really stand out within an activity or a club specifically to show off that interest and that enthusiasm, that excitement on your college applications. In terms of the summers, I know there's an increasing amount of pressure on students to do something during the summer. We agree they should do something, but what they do is not necessarily as important, I think, as a lot of families put the weight into it. We want to make sure that students are aware of and really stay clear of fancy pay-to-play programs whenever possible. They are typically relatively expensive, hence the term pay to play, but they don't necessarily offer too much substance when it comes to the actual experience. If it's a class on a college campus that they receive credit for, that's great. If it's a research experience where they're working with a faculty member to conduct original research, that's also fantastic. But if it's just kind of a summer camp that lasts for 2 or 3 weeks at a college campus where you stay in a residence hall and you eat in a dining hall, and maybe you kind of do some fun activities, that's not going to help you in the process, and it's not going to necessarily put the thumb on the scale that I think some families expect it to. Oh, I went to a summer program at Penn, so now I have a better chance of getting into Penn. That's not really how it works, to be honest. But like I said before, research is great. College credit is fantastic, but always talk to your counselor if you have questions about specific summer programs to determine the validity of them. Really good options are going to be things like summer jobs. That can be an internship, that can be a paid job, that can be shadowing someone in a specific experience like a hospital or even a corporate job. Community service is also a great idea. Again, internships or working with maybe a political campaign. It totally depends on the student and what their interests look like, but these are just some other options we want to highlight besides just going down the college program route. And then last but not least, let's say it again, students should do what they enjoy, right? We just don't want them to sit around watching Netflix and playing Halo all summer long. We want them to really kind of get out and experience the world around them. And like I said, contribute to their community, because that's really what colleges are looking for. At this point, though, I believe, am I transitioning back to Amy for wellness?
You are.
Fantastic.
So, I wanted to just make sure we took a moment to also just talk to you a little bit about wellness and what's going on. I'm sure you know, and you've seen it with your children in terms of like what happened with the pandemic and what's been going on, and wanted to touch base at a moment. 10th grade feels like a really appropriate time to have this conversation. So, you know, we want you to know that we're really far more concerned with MA students thriving wherever they enroll than really where they enroll. It's not, you know, of course we want them to go wherever is the best fit for them, but it's really much more important to us in our work that they are really going to thrive and be their best selves there. So, Denise, can you click to the next slide, please? Okay, so I wanted to share some data that was presented to the Association for College Counselors in Independent Schools that we are a part of. This data is from before the pandemic, and it comes from the American College Health Administration, which administers the National College Health Assessment. So you can see that there were close to 90,000 respondents here, and 87.4 reported feeling overwhelmed in all that they had to do. 53.4 reported things felt hopeless. 41.9 felt so depressed it was difficult to function. 63.4 felt overwhelming anxiety in the past year. 62.8% felt lonely during the past year, etc. This was pre-pandemic, right? This was before everything happened, before the world shut down. And I don't necessarily think that the overwhelmed thing is necessarily a bad thing. I think a lot of us feel overwhelmed at points in our life and our job, and that's part of like how we have to learn how to cope. But I think the other things like the anxiety, the hopelessness, the isolation, the loneliness, those are things that have increased. And it's just things we need to trend. We need to keep an eye on. Nearly a third of all college students right now are arriving on campus with some type of mental health issue. In 2019, again, pre-pandemic, the Washington Post came out with an article about students in high achieving schools being an at-risk group. And so I think, again, this is stuff that we're seeing it in the national public news. Organizations like Challenge Success and Authentic Connections that do wellness work in schools have shown that rates of anxiety and depression were climbing before the pandemic, but that it actually started dropping off, ironically, during the pandemic because the pace of life slowed down. Kids weren't running to a million different activities. And then it's actually climbed higher than pre-pandemic levels in the subsequent years. Studies have also shown that mental health is the best indicator of academic success in higher education. A wellness score is a far better predictor of success than an SAT score. And at this point, more than 2/3 of high school students are reporting being often or always worried about college admission. 3/4 of high school students report often or always being stressed by their schoolwork. So there are two things I'm going to put in the chat for you just that I want to just share that are blog posts that were on the Challenge Success website. Challenge Success operates out of Stanford, and they do a lot about just trying to make sure that they're promoting mental health and well-being in schools and really trying to confront the phenomenon of students just kind of going through the motion and just doing high school is what they talk about. So there are some resources for you. If we move to the next slide, I also wanted to show this trend. So this is a wellness trend from the Center for Collegiate Mental Health. It was from their annual report in 2022. The Center for Collegiate Mental Health operates out of Penn State. And from this graph, you can see, starts at 2013 and goes to the end of 22. You can see that anxiety has been steadily increasing. And that the other things that are mentioned there, stress, depression, academic performance, relationship problems, et cetera, holding fairly steady, except for the slight uptick in the 2021 cycle. Some of them, like stress, goes up a bunch from the 1920 to the 2021 cycle. And the same thing for the stress around academic performance. Prior to this time, issues around mental health and well-being in colleges was really the main concern was depression, not anxiety. But now rates of anxiety are considerably higher. Also, if you see trauma down there, which is the other one that's trending upward, the green one, that has been continually going up. And the hypothesis around it is that really that 2016 was a real demarcation point, which likely coincides with the election, anti-Semitism, rates of, racially charged events, different hate crimes that are happening, trauma around identity. And so that's the other thing that we're seeing that's happening that's been increasing. Again, all studies show that the best predictors of success in college are wellness indicators and finding community. It's not the admit rate. It's not the size of the college endowment. It's not what athletic conference they play in. It's really how many adults a student trusts on campus. And if they have healthy habits, they know to exercise regularly, do they get enough sleep? Are they eating well? So these are all things that we want to make sure we're bringing to your attention now, because these are the things that you can be working on and instilling in your child. So for the next slide, can we click over? So really, what can you do? What is in your toolkit as a parent right now? First, I would say start prioritizing wellness. Really make sure your kid has healthy habits around eating, that they're sleeping enough. We know that high school students don't necessarily get enough sleep. Make sure they're having time to spend with their friends and their loved ones. Downtime is really, really important. Help them practice balance. Make sure that they know that you love them and want them to thrive and be happy, and that it's not just about the grades or the school name or the test score. I promise you, our kids are smart. They pick up on this stuff, and even the slightest comment, maybe it's not even from you, maybe it's from a family member at a gathering, and they pick up on it, and it's not like which part of society or which thing needs to change. It's really where are kids not getting pressure around the college process. I feel like they put it on themselves. They get it from their friends. It's in the media. It's everywhere. So really just helping them find a sense of balance and like really understand that they are more than this process. Understand the spheres of control. There's a lot in this process we can't control, but the things we can control are our choices and how we approach it. We can focus on making sure our students are looking at places where they're going to thrive and become their best selves. In terms of managing expectations, I would encourage you to stay current about the current landscape so that you can feel informed and manage both your and your child's expectations. And we'll be doing presentations, like we said, throughout the rest of the process for you and your children. So we'll make sure we're giving you the most up-to-date info possible. And then lastly, I would say partner with our office and partner with the school. And that comes to things like, course selection. If a student is recommended for a certain course, trust that the department chair and the teachers have your child's best interest and that they're really putting your kid in the right class for them. Partner with us around the number of colleges on the list. We will be telling you, we want your child to apply to 10 to 12 colleges. Please partner with us around that. It's not healthy for kids to apply to 20 schools. It's really, really stressful on them. Also partner with us around the number of reach goals. It's really hard to have a lot of bad news in this process. And so we really want students, when they're seniors, to have a balanced list. We're honestly your kids' biggest cheerleaders in this process. We want them to get in everywhere. But the reach schools are called reach for a reason. So just make sure that when we're giving cautionary advice, please know that we really are your partner in this. We're not trying to at all undermine or question your child. We believe in them, and we're trying to give them really knowledgeable, grounded advice from our years of experience and our wisdom in that work. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox. I've had enough of that, and I will make sure I'm going to pass it back to my colleagues, and Denise, take it from here.
Thanks, Amy. I think that was great to speak on that part of how much we really are the biggest cheerleaders for your students and want, nothing but good news, and also want them to realize that things have changed a lot. And there are just a lot more factors that go into decisions that are beyond all of our control. And so just some final reminders and things to be on the lookout for. So as Amy mentioned earlier, we are having the standardized testing night with Adam Ingersoll on April 19th at 7 p.m. via Zoom. He is one of the co-founders of Compass Test Prep. So definitely, like Amy was saying, a great opportunity for you all to tune in and learn more about that realm. Again, please do have your sophomores take those practice exams this spring so that we can help them with establishing a testing plan for once they're in 11th grade, right? And as Amy mentioned earlier, it really is less about like what the scores are at this point and more about what test feels more comfortable for you, which do you think is a better fit for your testing style. And then lastly, again, we will have the sophomores or your students meet with us for a very short and quick check-in, mostly to kind of, again, talk about that testing piece and kind of which exam, now that they've taken a practice of each, do they feel most comfortable going into for the next school year.
Great. So just a quick kind of, I guess, plug, because we get a lot of times we get questions from families about specifically what can I do to learn more about this process. And these are two books that we recommend if you have the time and the bandwidth and you want to dive into this field a little bit deeper. These are some great kind of peeks into the process, specifically Jeff Salingo, who's been reporter on higher education for about 25 years. Used to work at US News and World Report back in the 80s and the 90s. And really kind of dove into this process by shadowing people who work in the admission offices at Emory, Davidson, and the University of Washington in Seattle. And by diving into so many different aspects of this process, he's able to then explain it to people kind of on the outside. And so we really recommend these two books if you have the time and the bandwidth, like I said, to dive in and kind of learn more. We would recommend these as your kind of your next reads. But moving back to Amy to kind of close us off, I believe we're just kind of going to leave it with questions.
Yeah, we just wanted to open it up to questions. So to either raise your hand and we'll try to call on you, or you're welcome to put a question in the chat and then we'll moderate it that way. Also, I also just want to just do a quick thank you again to Mariah Buckley and Huile So for translating. I recognize that we might speak rather quickly in these presentations, and while they were able to get the materials beforehand, I think you never know what someone is going to actually say. So what they're doing is really, really amazing, and we're super grateful for their time here.
Amy, do you see the questions? I'm definitely getting some, but I just wanted to make sure that we all.
Okay, I'm not seeing them, so if you see them, that's okay.
Okay.
You can. I've got one here that says, if your child is very interested in taking MA electives, at what level could they consider dropping a language? That's a great question. I think it's one of those things that I would say it depends on the student. And it really probably depends on the elective and the rest of the course load. Ideally, as Denise was saying earlier with the course load slide, ideally, we really want students to take, all of the main subjects: English, history, math, science, world language, and art all the way through, and show that continuity. That said, there are sometimes exceptions where a student has a particular interest in a certain elective or is actually struggling in one of the subjects and needs to have a different conversation and not take that. I think because the language requirement is 3 years and you have to reach at least level 3 at MA, I think most of our students take language all the way through at least junior year, if not senior year. Okay, I know I've got some more questions here, but Denise, you may have some too. So feel free to jump in if you want to go to the next one.
And I'll take one and then I'll send some your way as I'll say some out loud. But one that came up is what are considerations we should think of as a visit and think of as in colleges, i.e. city versus rural, large versus small. I'm not sure if the question here is like if you are visiting, I think the question is if you're visiting colleges, what types of colleges should you visit? And we definitely suggest like a wide range of schools. So, visiting schools that are maybe in a city or close to a city, and some of those that tend to be in more rural locations is great. Different sizes, also great. So what is it like to be at a smaller college? I've been telling students that it's very unlikely that they'll find colleges as small as MA, but there is a difference between a small size college, and a much larger school. And for students who maybe have always been in a smaller school environment, they just might not know what a large school environment can feel like. So it's definitely important to visit some of those bigger schools or like a range in sizes. The other piece is definitely a range in selectivity. So while again, it is great to maybe visit some of those very, very well-known and selective institutions, we do caution against only visiting those schools, right? And definitely making sure you're visiting a wide range. And so we actually do have a list of clusters. So if maybe you are visiting a specific region, and that you already have a trip planned, reach out to us and we're happy to share that list so that you can see schools that are kind of grouped close to each other or relatively close to each other, but fall into a couple of different categories. And we're happy to share that as well. That was one question. I definitely have more, but Amy, I don't know if you have some that are coming.
No, I do too. So we'll just alternate.
Okay.
So I have one around reaching out to us if your child is thinking about playing sports in college. And I know we had a program, oops, my earpiece just fell out. We had a recent program with JT Thomas that we have a recording for. So for those of you on the call who were not able to attend it, if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to one of us and we can send you the recording. If your child is thinking of playing college sports, I would say after your child has been paired with a counselor, when we do our check-in this spring after the testing, that's probably a good time for just you to give us just a touch base with us around what your child is thinking about. And then that way we can get a better sense of the timeline, as it really varies by sport and which division they're hoping to play in. The other question I got was just, is 10 to 12 colleges a higher number than we've recommended in the past? I would say typically we would always say 8 to 10 in the past. And so the reason I said 10 to 12 is at least this year, we were just noticing a lot of kids wanting to maybe add additional UC campuses, for example, just to make sure that they were covered. So that's why I increased it slightly. But really, if your student wants to apply to fewer than 10 schools, we are going to applaud it and we will be very happy about that. We just want to make sure that their list is balanced and that there is a good number of what we call reach schools, possible schools, and likely schools. Denise, you've got a question there?
I have a couple. One was, can we share the slide deck? So this is being recorded. I think we can definitely share out the recording and maybe even the slide deck if requested. Another that maybe, I don't know, Jake, Amy, if you want to take it. If my child is going away for the first half of their junior year, what should we be doing now?
Jake, do you want to answer it so that Denise and I aren't dominating the conversation?
Yeah, sure. I would say first and foremost is get in touch with the school that they're attending or whatever program they're attending to make sure that the transcript is secured at the end of the experience. We do not incorporate other schools' grades into the MA transcript, so we will need that separate document. Other than that, Amy, if you want to weigh in, I would say mostly just look forward to the experience, right? Understand the fact that you're going away. It might be to Idaho, it might be to Vermont, who knows, where the school is, but these can be really formative and transformative experiences for students and really seminal in the sense of kind of who their identity ultimately becomes. I've had multiple students write very successfully about these programs in their college applications and receive acceptances from some, incredibly selective institutions. So just keep in mind that it can be a really transformative experience. Be prepared that it can be a really transformative experience. Maybe your student comes back a little different than when they entered the school or the program, I should say. But I would say in general, those are the kind of two big pieces of advice, is to get the transcript lined up and to be prepared for, some major changes from your student's identity. Amy, anything to add?
I would just add if there that it's really important to touch base with Katrina Wenzel in the academic dean's office around any classes that might not pair up, and just to make sure that you're going in with your eyes open in terms of sometimes there just may be courses where the student needs to work on it independently while they're gone to make sure that they're going to be okay for the next class when they come back. So that kind of thing. But I think Katrina's office is probably the right place to get all your questions answered there.
Absolutely.
I have another question just in terms of how we are pairing counselors with students. And so we really are we're just trying to make sure that in the sophomore class that we're all having like basically an assortment of the full range of the class. So we really look to make sure that we've got a pretty equal gender distribution about athletes, artists, etc. And that's really the way it happens. If we've worked with a family before because of a sibling, we might be taking that into consideration as well. But really, we're just trying to make sure that we've got an even caseload amongst all of the counselors, and that really we're getting the full array of all of the wonderful students that MA has to offer.
Thanks, Amy.
Denise, do you have other questions there?
I do. One question that came was this, does MA provide SAT or ACT prep sessions? So at MA, we don't specifically offer prep sessions, but we can definitely recommend students to partner companies that offer prep sessions. Anything to add there, Amy?
Sorry, I was reading the next question. Can you say that one more time?
Yeah,
I'm so sorry, Denise.
Just if MA provides any like SAT or ACT prep sessions at MA specifically.
No, not test prep per se, just the practice tests. And then students will also have the opportunity on X Day next fall to take a full length practice test again on campus, whichever test they opt to take. So that's why we're doing this now in the spring. We want students to be exposed to both kinds of tests so that they're making an informed choice. Part of that also is wanting to make sure that you have time as a family to really plan ahead to when you are going to test prep. And prep can really look different depending on the student and depending on the family situation. Prep can be, a student doing a lot of the work on their own and using free resources online like Khan Academy and doing a bunch of practice tests. Prep can look like taking a class. Prep can look like individualized tutoring. And the cost of all of that can really, really, really vary. So we want to make sure you have plenty of time as families to make informed choices on this. I would just say if this, we would want the students to be prepared in some way, shape, or form taking the test. We don't want them to go in cold, but that X Day test will give them another opportunity in their junior year to do that. And then that's, like I said, that would be where I would sum it up. Anything else that you or Jake, you want to add? No, okay. I have a question about electives. If kids want to take more electives, do they ever do summer classes so that they can move forward through requirements? If so, where do they typically do this? So I think it really, again, varies. There are certain things, and again, I would encourage you to reach out to the academic dean's office about anything where it might be a class that might be taking the place of something else that's here. Really, the colleges are going to want to see the student take their classes at MA and really be looking closely at that, unless obviously they're doing like the semester type programs that we talked about before. That said, if a student's taking a class, say at College of Marin or another thing, that's great. And we'll just take those transcripts and we'll send it to the colleges when they apply. But if it's something where they're trying to get ahead on certain electives here or requirements here, I would really recommend that you consult with the academic dean's office in terms of the school's policies on that.
I have some questions. One is, when does the course catalog get published? Can we review it before the April 25th due date? And yes, so it does get published prior to spring break, sometime around mid-March, right, Amy? And
yes.
so students
Yes.
will have, students and their families will have a couple of weeks to review those courses and the options. And again, if you have any questions before you're assigned to your counselor, you can absolutely just reach out to any or all of us and we can provide some guidance. And then if you have questions after spring break, once you are assigned and before that conference day, you can also reach out to your specific counselor. I have two other questions that I'm going to direct at Jake. These are tied to visits, and so I think that they go well together. One is, how far in advance do colleges tend to publish their tour schedules? And any advice on what we should try to accomplish during a college visit besides just driving around the campus or the town?
That's a great question. And I would say it really varies on the college. Some of them are, 3 to 6 months in advance. Some of them are doing them, a month or even 6 weeks in advance. So it really depends on the school, but you can always look at the website first for a source of information. And from there, if you have questions, you can always call their office. Sometimes it's a welcome center. If it's a large enough school, it's not actually done through the admission office. It's done through kind of a welcome center for tours. I would definitely recommend getting out of the car. That's first and foremost, is actually park the car and start walking around the campus to see how the fit feels. Go on an official tour and information session with the school if you have time. That takes about 2 hours total. If you've got more time, feel free to grab a bite to eat in a dining hall to see if there's the option to sit in on a class. Definitely grab some brochures and a campus newspaper, because that way you're hearing about things that students think about outside the admission office, that they're not necessarily giving you the spin of a professional tour guide. They're actually telling you about, this is something that we're concerned about, this is something that we're complaining about, what have you. It gives you other voices to consider besides just the one student you meet through the tour guide process. I have a question for the group, though, kind of moving forward from tours and options there is, and this comes from Arlena, what's the team's experience with French colleges? So they're looking more to the international and studying abroad. I would say our experience varies from country to country, but then we work together as a team whenever it comes to international applications. We've had students apply to schools in Canada, in the UK. Students have been looking into Ireland and other places in Europe. And so we'll work together as a team when it comes to, helping to advocate for and support a student when they're looking abroad, just to make sure that everyone's kind of on the same page about how to best support that student. Anything to add, Amy or Denise?
I would just add that if you have specific questions about that, which might, applying to an international university might feel like a completely different well, it is often a very completely different process. So if you have specific questions about that, feel free to reach out via email and we're happy to answer any questions you might have. It's just important to understand the way certain international universities respond to the testing that they require. So for example, like in France, they have the baccalaureate. So then if you don't have a bac program or you're not in an IB school, there just may be other things for you to consider. First of all, I have one thing I'm going to put in I don't mean to embarrass Denise, but I have a parent who said a very nice thing in the chat, and I told her I would pass it back on. So that was not written by me, but it was written by a current senior parent, and it was just a nice shout out. So I wanted to make sure I shared that. And then there was a question about mental health and wellness and how a student shows in their application that they are mentally healthy and prepared for the college experience. I think in general, I think the colleges are expecting and assuming that the student is healthy and prepared through as they're writing about themselves and as their recommendation letters and their school report from us would indicate. I don't think it's something that is necessarily highlighted, like that they're worried that, oh, the kids aren't mentally ready, and so then therefore it has to be stated in the letter that they are. That said, I recognize that me sharing all those stats may have raised some alarm bells, and I know that in the question, the person said, how are 60% of college students arriving with mental health issues? It's actually, I said a third. It was a third that in the report that we watched through the Association for College Counselors in Independent Schools, it was someone who works in mental health at Syracuse that shared the stats, and he was the one that was saying that a third of students are coming with some form of mental health issues on campus. And that was through the national data that they were collecting.
The last question I
Okay.
had was if we will share the
Yes.
recording. And yes, I think in the past we've asked folks to reach out if they needed it, but we can also maybe just send it to folks that registered. So yes, we can share the recording out.
Absolutely. Also, I just want to make sure you know that we are here, and you'll hear from us again in the fall next year, and like you'll hear from us with the emails later on this spring. But please know that if questions come up and you have things that you want to make sure you reach out to us about, just know that we are here for you and for your kids. And we look forward to getting to know you in the weeks and months and years ahead.
And thank you for the kind words, dear parent.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in tonight.